Assalamu alaikum. Recently, a huge milestone in the development of the cryptocurrency space was reached. The highly anticipated first US-based Bitcoin ETF was approved and began trading, opening the door for a much broader base of Bitcoin investors. An ETF, which stands for Exchange Traded Fund, is simply a fund that trades on the stock market like a stock does. Bitcoin ETFs give average investors an additional option to invest in Bitcoin using the same accounts they use to invest in stocks, and without having to deal with physical possession of Bitcoin. Additionally, these ETFs enable investors to gain exposure to Bitcoin in their tax-advantaged accounts like Roth and traditional IRAs in the US or ISAs in the UK. The US-based Bitcoin ETF that already started trading as of the date of this video goes by the name of ProShares Bitcoin Strategy ETF and trades under the ticker symbol BITO. There are additional US-based Bitcoin ETFs that are scheduled to start trading in the coming period, including the Valkyrie Bitcoin Strategy ETF, which is set to trade under the ticker symbol BTF, and the VanEck Bitcoin ETF. So the question that suggests itself is, which of these Bitcoin ETFs is halal to invest in? I don't want to waste anyone's time, so I'll start with my conclusion, and then the rest of the video I'll give a more detailed explanation for those interested and cover some other options to buy Bitcoin. So my conclusion is that the ETFs that are approved for trading in the US as of the date of this video are futures-backed ETFs, which I find to be haram. So that was the conclusion. If that's all you need, goodbye. Leave a like, I'd really appreciate it. If you'd like to understand my reasoning and familiarize yourself with some other options to buying Bitcoin, then stay tuned. If you're new here, my name is Rakan Kayali. I am the founder of Practical Islamic Finance, where we try to help people globally build wealth in a halal way. Become part of our growing community by going to practicalislamicfinance.com and joining our free newsletter. Join our Discord and social media. Links to do all of these things are in the description of this video. Also, if you are a permanent resident of the United States and you need halal funding that can be used for anything basically, go to fundmebff.com and apply for funding. To answer the question of whether it is halal or haram to buy shares in these new Bitcoin ETFs, we have to first be clear about what exactly we are buying when we buy shares in these ETFs. The three Bitcoin ETFs mentioned earlier do not directly hold any Bitcoin. So what are we buying when we buy them? Instead, these Bitcoin ETFs actually hold Bitcoin futures, which is an important distinction. Bitcoin futures are agreements to buy or sell Bitcoin at some point in the future at a price that is determined today. At the specified date in the future, if Bitcoin is worth more than what the investor agreed to pay for them, the investor makes money. If they are worth less, then the investor loses money. In the case of Bitcoin futures, over 99% of them are actually cash settled, meaning just the amount of profit or loss is what is exchanged between the contracting parties at settlement date and not the actual Bitcoin. So no Bitcoin is exchanged between the parties of the futures contract, only money. Therefore, it's a zero-sum game. One side's gain is the other side's loss. Put differently, cash-settled Bitcoin futures are simply financial bets on the price direction of Bitcoin. This makes these futures a form of prohibited al-maisir or gambling. On al-maisir, the generous Quran says the following, translated into English: "O you who believe, intoxicants al-maisir, sacrificing for idols and making decisions based on games of chance are sicknesses from the work of Satan. So avoid these things so you may prosper. Satan desires to create enmity and hatred among you through intoxicants and al-maisir, and to stop you from praying and remembering Allah. So will you abstain from these things?" So because of the existence of al-maisir in the form of these futures contracts that the futures-based ETFs are actually tracking, I find profiting from these futures-backed ETFs to be haram. For more on this concept, watch the video I made on crypto futures. Link to that is in the description of this video. Now, noteworthy here is that futures-backed ETFs could cost an additional 5 to 10% per year to roll into new futures contracts when the old ones expire, alongside another 1 to 2% in fees. So investing in physically backed ETFs as opposed to futures-backed ETFs is not only the halal way to do things, but also the more profitable way as well. As of the date of this video, all of the Bitcoin ETFs that are approved to trade on US-based exchanges are futures-based ETFs and don't actually own any Bitcoin. It is likely that the only Bitcoin ETFs that are going to be approved for US exchanges, at least in the near term, will only be those that are futures-backed because US regulators are much more familiar and comfortable regulating futures markets than they are crypto exchanges, which are largely unregulated. Now, don't despair, however. There are many other options to gain exposure to the price of Bitcoin in the US and abroad. The first obvious option is through direct ownership of Bitcoin. There are many brokerages that enable one to do this. The brokerage I use the most is Coinbase. If you use the link on the screen to sign up, you'll get $10 when you make your first transaction of at least $100. Direct ownership is by far the most profitable way to own Bitcoin, since you won't be paying anyone a fee to store it for you, but you also have to worry about storage. There are many tutorials online about securing your Bitcoin and storing it. I'd invest 15 minutes into watching one if your Bitcoin position is substantial. Also, if you decide to use Coinbase, be sure to use their Pro version to avoid the otherwise exorbitant fees they charge. A second way to gain exposure to Bitcoin is through one of the many physically backed Bitcoin ETFs that are traded on exchanges outside the US. Examples of these ETFs are Canadian-based 3iQ CoinShares, Purpose Bitcoin, and CI Galaxy Bitcoin. These are 3 ETFs that are physically backed by Bitcoin rather than futures contracts. Another option to invest in Bitcoin is through Grayscale Bitcoin Trust, ticker symbol GBTC. This fund also directly holds Bitcoin. It started out as a private investment that was only open to some investors, but those investors sold their original shares into the public market, so now anyone can buy shares in the fund. The drawback of this fund is that it charges a fee of 2% of assets under management annually. They have announced that they are seeking to convert to an ETF structure, which should bring their rather high 2% management fee down substantially. I do think that eventually a physically backed Bitcoin ETF will get approved for US exchanges as regulators become more familiar with the crypto asset. But until then, just make sure that when you're investing in a ETF that it is a physically backed ETF and not a futures-backed ETF. Nothing in this video was financial advice, so be sure to do your own due diligence before making any investment decisions. If you'd like to follow my crypto portfolio, you can do so using the link in the description. Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Until next time, make sure to take care of yourself. Assalamu alaikum and peace be upon you all.